So, like, getting back to, like, my mom and I's strenuous relationship for a while, I think I just really didn't understand her, and I didn't understand that, like, they did this because they loved me and, like, they wanted the best for me.
Welcome to With You Podcast. I'm David.
And I'm Tara, and we explore relationships and life transitions.
We are in our adoption series, and we have a mother-daughter combination that are talking about their expertise in the adoption process.
Right. So we're going to hear the story from Joy and her daughter, Myah. Myah's 22, and
Joy's a little bit older.
And Joy was in a previous episode in the marriage series with her husband, so you can go back and listen to that if you like the beginning of the story. And we're really excited to hear their story of becoming parents and more from Myah as well.
We're excited to have Joy and Myah here today. Joy's a colleague of mine. Myah's her daughter, and they're going to talk to us about their adoption journey.
Yeah, we can't wait. We've already talked to Joy and Amato once on the podcast, and so we get to hear more of their family story.
She agreed to come back.
Got you once, now we got you twice. We're eager to hear more of the story and how Myah joined your family. So I think we're going to start. So we're delving into the whole idea of adoption, and I'm very touched by adoption in my own family because I have siblings who were adopted, and there's so many interesting stories and so much love that's involved that we want to hear lots of different journeys, and we're really excited to hear perspectives from a parent and a child and how that looks and what comes into it. And so I think we'd like to start with just introducing you, and then we'll kind of go into your story. So why don't you both just introduce yourselves and a little bit about who you are, and then we'll go from there.
I'm Myah. I'm Myah Lobatos. I'm the daughter. I am about to turn 22. I'm just really interested in anything creative. I've always been a musician. I always loved to just like do things with my hands. I've always had a big heart and just been very independent. So, they've had a handful, but
You know what, Myah? All children are that way.
A lot. Yeah, there's a lot going on. It makes life more interesting, So
That's right.
That's
Joy.
true.
I'm Joy Lobatos. My husband and I have been married for 29 years and didn't ever think this was going to be our journey originally. And so it has been a roller coaster of emotions up and down, but it's so easy to see God's hand all along the way. And so excited to share the really great things that he's done in our lives and through the people that he's placed in our lives. So
Awesome. Well, why don't we start at the beginning? So for people who want to know, if they haven't heard the original origin story of Joy and Amato getting together, that story is on the podcast. So we're going beyond that now, and you guys starting your family. So tell us kind of how that went and how that started.
the very first memory that I really have of picturing myself as a parent was when I was in high school. And I was taking this child development class, and it was towards the end of my senior year. And we got to try on an empathy belly.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember putting it on, and then they had a whole shirt that you put over it and everything. So you really couldn't tell. And I remember looking at myself in the mirror and just thinking, oh, I can't wait for that to be real someday. Um, So that was the expectation of what life would look like going forward. Amato and I waited for a couple of years after we got married. I was 22 when we got married, so I was, up for waiting a little bit before we wanted to try. But once we felt settled and everything, then we started to try, and it just never happened. No explanations medically, just a lot of heartache because it affects every part of your life, right? How you interact with other people who are going through those experiences and your own relationship and how you navigate that. And just yourself, your own thoughts and wishes, and super challenging. So, and being in ministry, I feel like added another layer to that challenge, you know, feeling like you kind of followed God's design for marriage and sexual purity and all of that, and then the kids thing to not happen feels like, wait, doesn't feel fair. And being in ministry also was challenging in that you're kind of in a fishbowl. Lots of people have thoughts and opinions.
And
Some really not.
trying to be helpful, right?
Yes, yes, but often not, and often really discouraging. I know over the years, I can't even tell you the number of business cards people would give me for infertility specialists. Just walk up to me and like
Oh,
unsolicited, giving me all this
that's a little
information.
personal.
I once had people walk up to me at church that I did not know, and they grabbed my belly to start praying for me to get pregnant.
Oh.
Nope, that's not okay.
That's not okay. So on
Don't do
the
that.
do it, don't do it, you're saying probably
Yeah,
not to do that.
don't touch people unsolicited. It's really not a good thing. But there's like the whole spiritual component too that I felt like people
Mm.
were kind of projecting on us, like, well, God must be punishing you for
Oh,
something, and
no.
that's why none of this is working out, or that there was something wrong with my spiritual life. And so, like, none of that is true.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so, just feeling like you have to combat all of those things on top of the heartache that exists is really difficult. So, we ended up, when we moved out to Wyoming to do a church plant out there, we had some dear, dear friends that we had gone to Moody with that had been through very similar experiences. He's Hispanic, she's Caucasian. So some of the different intercultural things that we dealt with were similar. And they also had been dealing with unexplained infertility, and they ended up adopting twin 2-year-old girls. And I remember them coming and staying at our house and bringing the girls with them. And so that was just a really great exposure to a different option, and seeing them um, take on that role and that responsibility. And it gave us, I think, hope and encouragement to maybe pursue that as an option for us. I was on board more quickly than Amato was, for sure. He was more hesitant. He was just still really struggling, feeling like it.
Well,
But
there's a grief in terms of narrative, that like the story we tell about ourselves or the story that we kind of anticipate, and when it deviates from that, it's not that there's not good things coming, it's just that that story kind of ends, and there's a grieving of that trajectory, and it's hard to see anything else sometimes before you work through that.
yeah, and I feel like we were so busy with ministry stuff, we didn't have a lot of space to grieve.
Yeah.
And like, so I think that probably prolonged how difficult things were, because we just kept moving on, doing all the
Mhm.
things that you have to do and not really facing it head on.
Yeah.
So that
So
probably wasn't healthy.
Amato caught up to you.
He did.
Okay.
He did. After our friends had been over, we thought, we could do this. Because another big component to adoption is the cost. It can be very expensive. And we were church planting, so we were living on support to begin with. And so that's just really tricky. We decided we would look into a special needs adoption, primarily with sibling groups, was our original plan. Like, let's just adopt, a sibling group. They're harder to place because, obviously you want them to stay together, but not everybody's equipped to do that. But we were kind of a perfect scenario for that. So filled out all our paperwork with Wyoming Children's Society and did all the things. We finished our paperwork in, I think, early April. And within a couple, I always feel like I have to preface, like, this is not normal. Don't expect, like, if you're in this journey, don't expect that this is automatically the way it's going to go. But within a couple weeks, we got a call from them that they had shown our file to a woman who was expecting, that was exploring adoption, and she had picked us. And so, I mean, we got all our paperwork in April, and Myah was in our house in June. And
Wow.
that is like
Yeah, that's not normal.
crazy fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
There was a
but
plan.
yeah.
Myah had chosen you from in utero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So her birth mom, her name is Veronica. She's a beautiful person. She had some substance abuse struggles and was receiving help for that when she became pregnant. And so she was working through the place where she was receiving treatment, and then also with the adoption agency. And she had a counselor there with her all the time from the facility. And we got to talk to her on the phone once before Maya was born. And sh- I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through it.
See.
Whew.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
uh,
It's okay.
she
It's a lot of emotions.
it's so yeah, I do really good most of the time, but
Yeah.
sometimes it pops up. So she had been, it's so awkward, right? Like, what do you say to somebody that's thinking about giving you their baby? Like that, it's just
Yeah.
not a natural situation. And she said, "Have you guys thought of any names?" And we had struggled to come up with a boy's name that we liked, both of us, but we really, and Amato said on the phone, "But if it's a girl, we really love the name Maya." And she starts screaming,
oh,
oh my gosh, on the other end.
okay.
And
A
I'm
good
like,
screaming or a bad screaming?
we didn't know.
Oh, okay.
The nurse was running, like, "Are you okay?" Like, they didn't know what was happening either.
Yeah, we weren't sure if, like, did we say something wrong? Like, you're just on edge. But Veronica said that that morning she was trying to think of what she would want to name the baby if she had been given the opportunity to. And that morning she had a marker sitting on her nightstand and she wrote the name Maya.
All over her arm.
Wow.
So she wrote the name Maya on her arm. And everybody was just like super taken back because, at least at the time, it was not a super common name. And the fact that we both came up with it independently was just, I feel like God's gift to all of us to know that this was his plan. So when things were hard down the line, we could all look back at that and know that he was in it from the start. I've been really grateful for that. So we had a great conversation, and then she went into labor not long after that, and we lived 4 hours away from where she was, and so we didn't get to meet her in person until she was in labor. So we had to drive 4 hours to get to her, and so we drove to Rock Springs, Wyoming,
Rock
which,
Springs.
yeah, is really in the middle of nowhere, and we met Veronica about 10 minutes before Maya was born.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy standing there, talking to her in person, and she was so amazing to have just the willingness to even meet us at that
Yes.
moment. I mean, that
Wow.
blows my mind. So, we talked with her for a few minutes, and then we left, and then we sat in the waiting room and waited. Her counselor from the facility was there with her, and Veronica had 2 other children previous to that, and so they were with her family, but she wanted something different for Maya, and so, after she was born, we got to see her, got to hold her. We all spent the evening together that evening at the hospital, and we thought everything was good, and then the next morning, we got a call from our caseworker at the adoption agency, and she said, "Things aren't looking very good." So Veronica had spent the whole night holding her and naturally was struggling. I wouldn't expect anything else. So we ended up just driving around Rock Springs, Wyoming, which there's not much.
Interesting to see.
Up and down the same road for the entire morning, just praying, calling a bunch of friends. Obviously, we wanted Veronica to make the choice that was the best choice for her and the best choice for Myah. And we hoped we would get to be involved, but at that point, we didn't really know. And so I remember her counselor saying, "Why don't you give us a call at noon, and then we'll see where things stand." And so at noon, we drove back to the hospital parking lot and we sat there and we called, and her caseworker said, "Yeah, she's ready to see you guys again. And why don't you bring her clothes?" So we did that. And I think the hardest thing I've ever done is stand in that room and have her place Myah in my arms. Just knowing the grief that she was experiencing and would continue to experience, it just broke my heart for her because I knew how sad I was to not be a mom. And I just thought it's gonna be devastating for her, like, this journey. It's such a selfless choice, and I love her dearly, and, I'm so thankful for her and for the communication we've continued to have over the years and staying in touch, and she has always, in our interactions, she is always looking out for Myah and wanting to make sure that whatever's going on is best for Myah, and I'm amazed by her. I really am.
She never overpromises, like, anything.
Yep, she's a beautiful person.
Mhm.
So so we did keep in touch, and we did, that was one of the things she was struggling with the idea of not seeing her, not having pictures or whatever. And we told her, of course we'll do that. We'll do whatever you want, like, because I wanted it to not be a bad experience for her too. And so we learned later that she thought we were just saying that. She didn't think we would actually follow through. So when we did, she was kind of taken back by it, that we really do care about her very much, and we weren't just saying that. And she will always be part of our lives for sure. So it's been hard, the grief of, because it's all mixed together, right? Like I didn't get to carry a baby, and so I have that loss of knowing all of those things, what it feels like, what our baby would look like, all those losses that you experience. But I have something that most people don't get to experience, and standing there and having somebody place this child with me. It's stunning, and I'm I'm thankful despite it being hard. I'm thankful. Yeah. It's a mess of a journey, but it is worth it and so, so good. And it continues. I mean, it
Yeah.
doesn't end there, right? It
No.
Yeah.
goes on.
Well, we're just
Yeah.
kind of at the beginning of the story.
This is just the origin
Yeah.
story.
I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But
I
I
keep
think
learning it too.
it's
Yeah,
important to think about, and for people to think about, holding two different things where there's joy and grief, and it's kind of mixed together, your own, others, all of that. And
yeah.
how do you make sense of it? And how do you not let it intrude in the good and difficult times of parenting?
Yeah.
Right, and for Myah as well, and that's where, you're in the story now. You've been born. You're
Yeah. Okay.
um,
Okay.
and you've helped to make your mom's dreams come true, but there's also a mix of a lot of stuff for you in all of that too. So we want to hear you tell what your life was like growing up, but also maybe when you first were aware that you were of the adoption story and how you came to be in your mom and dad's lives.
Yeah. I guess I'm very grateful for how I was raised and everything, the good, the bad, every fight that we had, every misunderstanding that I had with them, I understand now, and I know that they don't hold that against me either. and that they understand things that they didn't know about me, you know? I grew up, like, always just knowing about, like, being adopted, like, I don't think there was any certain point where, it just kinda hit me, especially since I feel like I've been very conscious from a young age. Like, I remember, like, I don't know if it's just from a picture, but I have a very, like, photogenic memory. So, like, even seeing pictures can trigger memories. Like, I remember being bathed in the sink and bringing tissues to my mom when I was, like, 2, 3 years old because she was crying, and I didn't like that. It made me panic, you know? Like, and I would cook for them, like, one I think Saturday morning, I was 3 years old, I cooked eggs and onions and stuff, like, I used knives,
Wow.
I turned on the
Wow.
stove. I just wanted to make them breakfast in bed, like, I
Yeah.
just, like, wanted to thank them, and, I was just very independent, and, like, as I think about it, I feel like, I owed them. They didn't have to do this, and, like, they didn't know, like, what they were getting themselves into is what I always told myself, and that's, like, the worst way to think about it, and that really, I think, messed up me and my mom's relationship for a long time too, and it's just like, I didn't understand that their love was unconditional for the longest time until really, like, the past 2 to 3 years. So, but, like, and I think just getting closer to my mom and getting closure from, my birth mom, Veronica, like, over the summer, that was also a crazy story. Like, this has just really put me in a good spot moving forward where, you know, it's just figuring it out from here, honestly, from where I want to go, because I think a lot of people also have expectations of me and each family.
Yeah.
So
So,
that's hard.
Maya, getting back to kind of that kind of negative, kind of the way you said it wasn't best to think about that. I think about maybe there's kids that are listening that have been adopted. What was difficult about thinking about that way that kind of affected your relationship in a struggle way and then in a good way with your mom?
Well, it felt like I would morph to things, like, I didn't know what I really liked, I didn't feel like I fit in really necessarily with her side of the family because they were more, like, computer, gaming type things, and I liked that, but I also like to go outside and play sports, which is like my dad, Amato's family, But then they were too rough with me and I was too sensitive, you know? So, Anthony's side, and then, sometimes they're not enough, and then, like, I go to Veronica's side and they're just so cold, like, it's just, like,
So there was really a where do I fit? Like little
yeah,
parts of me are everywhere, but
it
where's
feels like the four corners. I
yeah.
don't know if you know that monument, like, you're just on your hands and knees, and, like, I like everyone, but I'm always missing something or someone if I go too much into that or everything. So, like, it was hard because I think I was actually mad at myself for a long time just because I didn't understand. Like, and I
Mm.
just took that out on everything around me, and, you know, I always, like, I was taught to, just keep a positive attitude and everything, and I think that's why it came out more at home.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I would just that's my safe space, and, like, so, like, getting back to, like, my mom and I's strenuous relationship for a while, I think I just really didn't understand her, and I didn't understand that, like, they did this because they loved me and, like, they wanted the best for me.
Mm.
I always saw, like, my siblings growing up together and, like, didn't see the fact that they were living with my biological grandparents and that my mom was still using up until 5 months ago and stuff like that, and I just didn't see those things, and I just was like, I just wanted siblings. Like, I wanted, like, a family that I didn't feel like I owed,
Yeah.
Mm.
and that was really hard, that was so hard, but, you know,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
I think you're making complete sense of
Yeah.
that.
And let me explain just for the Four Corners thing. I know what you're talking about
Yeah,
because it's where four
yeah,
states come together in the United
yeah,
States. It's Arizona, Colorado, Utah, and
It's
Nevada.
Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, and Utah,
There
I
you go.
believe,
Yeah.
yeah.
So there's a spot where they come together, and so you can, and there's a little monument where you can actually put,
Yeah,
a
you can
hand,
be in 4
and
states at
yeah,
one
at one
time.
time. So I like that illustration of feeling like,
Mhm.
I don't completely belong in any one of these, and you're figuring
Yeah,
out that identity, like which one is most me, and by jumping all the way into one, I lose something from the other one.
exactly, yeah,
Yeah, so I understand it's a lot of things going on, and at the age where we all struggle with identity, everybody struggles
yeah.
with who am I, where do I belong, but you had a lot of extra factors to add into that.
And trying not to disappoint people, like, you know, I just felt like I had this big story. My dad always told me, like, "God's gonna do something with you one day," and that scared me,
Mm.
Like, I was like, "Oh, I gotta be on my best behavior then, I guess." Like, so
Yeah,
it's
and
definitely
but that where do I fit, and seeing the siblings and seeing them living a
yeah,
different life, but not being able to see the day-to-day part of that, of
yeah,
sometimes the fantasy is better than the reality, and I could imagine going,
yeah,
"Oh, I kind of want that."
exactly, yeah, and that's kind of so I guess so when I turned 18, uh, I didn't really like it was like COVID was my senior year and everything, so,
Oh.
jobs weren't the same. So I had graduated, I had just started working at Chipotle, and, like, one day I was like I basically up and left Illinois. I was like, "I'm moving to Wyoming. I'm getting to know, like, my birth dad and, like, 5, 6 of my siblings." Like, I was just angry. I wasn't angry at my parents, but I was angry at the world. I was angry at just everything around me, and I just needed to get out. And my birth dad always made a lot of promises and could never keep them and would try to do things to make up for them, like, talk to me nicer or he bought me, like, a $500 swinging chair out of the blue because I had looked at it at a store, you know? So but it wasn't enough. But Veronica, she never really wished me happy birthday, she never really went out of her way, but she knew she couldn't, so she didn't. She knew she wasn't in a good spot. So I had, like, grown up, like, hating, Veronica, but, like, loving her deep down inside and not knowing why. But loving Anthony and hating him for some reason and not knowing why. And, like, this second trip that I had this past June that I'll talk about really cleared that up for me. When I was 18, I moved out to Wyoming to go live with him. That was the intention, but out of nowhere, they had gotten COVID. There's, like, 7 of them in the house, so they had been communicating with Joy, my mom, like, "Yeah, now Trenton has it, now Xavier has it. Oh, sorry, we were doing this," and, like, 7 weeks go by. Like, the months and months just keep and it's just there's no full answer, and it's just, like, I just at that point, I was already living on my own, had my own place with a guy that I had met at the time, and I was just, I guess starting my life up in Wyoming. And, that was definitely a big experience, but I got very let down. I felt like, why? Like I grew up in a pastor's family. Like, if anything, like, I just want to like know my siblings. And what frustrated me like the most about that was because Anthony has been through the same exact thing. He didn't know his father until about like 6 or 7 years ago. And, I was looking through some old texts with him this morning, just to see, like, where our relationship was at because I've cut him off at this point, 'cause he's just not the person for me. But he had told me that his depression stemmed from, obviously, drug use and just loneliness of growing up as an only child and wanting to be a part of a family. And, like, it's just crazy because like, him and I deal with it in such different ways. Like, so this June, I had done the same thing almost, but I didn't wanna move down there, but I was definitely struggling with watching my siblings grow up. There's 15 to 10-year-old, right now, or 18 and 10-year-old over there, so it's hard. because I was just struggling mentally and I wanted to get some more insight because we work the same mentally for the most part. So he bought me a ticket for like 2 days from then, like, oh, you can always with me as long as you want. We can get you a job, promised all these things. So I went up there that Tuesday, and that was probably one of the most traumatic months of my life, honestly. But a lot was brought to light. Like everything worked out just how it should have, but it was definitely hard. So I had ooh, sorry. Right when I got there, my siblings like took me in immediately. Like I think that was the first unconditional love that I ever accepted, which has helped me unconditionally love my parents and not feel like it's like an owed love that's unconditional. But they took me in immediately. So I spent most of the time with my siblings.
Yeah, so
It's like
you're there in this kind of
during
chaos that's going on,
yeah,
and going, I kind of wanted this, but I don't. Joy,
yeah.
while all that's happening,
Mhm.
how are things for you as think have raised
Yeah.
raised Myah? She's exploring kind of the other side of the family. How do you live in that space?
It's challenging for sure. Cry a lot.
Yeah, yeah,
When she left, yeah, super hard. Just fear, fear
yeah,
of the things that we knew she would be exposed to, fear for the things we didn't know that might
yeah,
come her way. We've always known that this was a journey she was going to need to take. She's been fiercely independent since she was born. Um,
Working
she
with
would not
knives at
even
age 3. It sounds
oh
like
my gosh. Yeah. Scared us a little that morning.
yeah.
Amato and I looked at each
Everything
other
was
like,
off.
"Oh dear, she's had the gas stove on."
Well, I love how when you introduced yourself, Myah, you're like, I like to work with my hands. I like a project. And then we hear, yeah, you're cooking at age 3. That really
Yeah,
fits with kind of your kind of
yeah,
How you're made.
yeah,
self-expression.
yeah.
So,
No, that's what I love.
so
Yeah, even
she's,
in kindergarten, she would not let us walk her in.
yeah.
So she would make us wait outside. She would say, "I do it." Okay, you do it.
I do
So
it.
we knew this day was coming where she was going to need to explore all of these things and learn for herself maybe some of the reasons why, Veronica felt like placing her with a different family was the best option for her at that point. But it's hard to watch her experience because we could see the hopefulness that she had, but we also knew what was probably coming on the other side of that. And it's just been really hard to watch her struggle through that. But
Yeah,
um,
how do you love and love kind of with open arms of knowing your daughter, knowing she needs to kind of do it. I do it myself. She has to kind of learn it herself, and yet you anticipate maybe some pain. How do you do that?
we pray a lot. But I do go back to that phone call and knowing that God put us all together and He didn't do that for no reason. And I go back to that moment frequently to remind myself that He is the one in control of all of this. He loves her more than I do. He's going to take care of her and just lean into that
Yeah.
constantly because,
That letting go part is so hard for any parent to know that we want to protect our children from pain. And
yeah,
it's not possible and sometimes actually harmful to not let them experience life themselves. And
yeah.
yeah.
It's such a catch-22 with adoption too, because I think the natural tendency selfishly is to be like, okay, we've got the baby, run, and not have contact.
I just all of a sudden had a picture in my head of you and Amato sprinting out of the hospital with a baby and orderlies chasing you, and
We're gonna need to
Dad's like
link to
backing up.
Have you seen the movie Raising Arizona? I think we need to link to that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's a good word picture. But so that's the impulse. But
It is. And
you
our families also feel protective. And that was really challenging too, was Amato and I trying to navigate how we felt God was leading us through this process and how open we should be. Because our families struggled with the idea that we were still in communication with Veronica and Anthony and just feeling like that's a really bad idea. And why did
They
you
could
even
come
tell
kill
Myah
me.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why did you tell her she's adopted? Why didn't you just? But that's not going to go well down the road when you spring it on them someday. There's
Yeah.
challenges with that. So we tried to talk about it from an early age, but
Yeah.
felt very strongly that we needed that it would be best for Myah, even though it's hard, and that it would also, in those decisions, I also was very concerned about Veronica and the promise that we made to her and what would be best for her. And so I was not going to just cut her off. I couldn't do that to her ever. So, yeah, but it's challenging because you feel like the wounds get reopened over and over. And when we would go and we would visit her, it was great, but it was hard again. So just being willing to ride that roller coaster of we're going to do this and it's going to be hard
yeah.
but it'll be okay.
And you guys have navigated hard things. I think you were saying there were ups and downs and you guys are in a good place. It might be helpful for everyone kind of hear from both of you. What's what's gotten you to the good place? What advice do you have for people to kind of inform like this is the good place we're in and this is kind of what helped get there? So maybe we'll start with Myah and we'll close with Joy.
Well, I mean, over the summer, my birth dad had taken me up to Level because they both live in Wyoming still, just to see her on my 21st birthday and everything. And she had just gotten out of jail about like a month or two before that because she'd basically gotten kicked out. She has like a birth defect in one of her main arteries in her heart, and she was either going to just have to die in jail or get treated. So, obviously she wants to get treated, but if she uses again, obviously she's going to be sent back, and she didn't want that for herself. So it just all worked out. We went up there randomly, and she had no one to take her to court. I had my license. It was expired at the time, but I was just like, no one else is going to take her. Like, she's either going to get arrested because she doesn't go to court, you know, and then, she's the boy who cried wolf. So we had this hour long, hour to 2 hour long car ride over the summer that was totally unexpected. I brought her to Montana. We got lunch for the first time. This was the first time I saw her sober in so long. Like, I could just tell. I'm like, wow, you really weren't sober these times that I met you. Like, you can just tell. And just, to hear like, she didn't know if she did the right thing. She told me she didn't know if she did the right thing through it all, She was like, it was scared, and I just had to, like, have my faith that Amato and Joy were who they said they were, because they never faltered in that, and no one else had really done that for her, you know? And she didn't wanna mess me up anymore, and she apologized for the times she didn't say happy birthday and things like this, and just explained, like, how she shows love, because 'cause they're really not a touchy side. So, like, just being just taking time and, like, being open, and, like, I immediately told, I talked about the whole conversation to my parents, um, and I think we all just give each other closure, honestly. We all just kind of misunderstand each other, and, that's okay as long as you don't jump to conclusions, and, like, it's okay to be hurt, but it's what you do with that afterwards, like, you can't deny, like, and that's what Anthony did.
Yeah.
I had brought up afterwards. I was like, "This isn't okay," and everything, and he's like, "Well, this is me." So I'm like, "Well,
Yeah.
that's a cowardly answer, so
Well,
Yeah.
I
Well,
th-
and then
hard."
this is you. That's sounds like a really profound time. And I believe in the power of a road trip. You guys had some really concentrated time together. But
Yeah.
how would you say that's helped kind of integrate your identity as, coming from biologically that side, but having been raised by your parents? What are those things that you found that have contributed to your identity from Joy and Amato that you find
Oh,
joy in that makes you who you
yeah.
are?
Literally, the way I carry myself, like my happiness, my joy, my peace, my love, all comes from Amato and Joy.
Mm,
I know that. And like all my like manners and just like, thinking of others and empathy, that all comes from them.
Mm.
And I think I get a lot of my style and just like, my energy and everything. One from Amato, obviously, but but
Yep.
We are
definitely,
two peas in a pod.
definitely from my birth side. They all have had blue hair at some point. They all have piercings and like, but I'm glad to be in this spot because they can see that they can do both. You know,
Yeah.
like I consider myself Christian. I hold myself to high standards. It doesn't mean anything, and I for the longest time, I thought it did, because I felt so different, and I was like, "Why do I like these things?" And, you know,
Yeah.
like thinking that it doesn't make me a good person, but, so
Mhm.
a lot of double standards.
Well, I like how you talked about the honesty, the openness. I think that's helpful for
Mhm.
people because I think the when you're having some challenges of like what parts of me come from where, or just the difficulty and am I
Yeah,
loved, you have demonstrated that you are curious, you're adventurous, you're willing to
mhm,
take things head on,
yeah,
and you are willing to kind of retreat from a position you've taken from, right? Like you take a
mhm,
hard position and
yeah,
like, ooh,
I
you
will
know
be
what?
yeah.
I'm gonna say that was a mistake and I'm gonna back
Yeah,
up from it, which is
yeah,
it's amazing,
yeah.
Myah. And I think that's something we can all learn from in having healthy relationships is that openness and feeling passionate, but also not kind of dying on that hill of being able to
yeah,
go, oh, I feel this way, but I also can realize there's
mhm,
change and I can do something different and move from that. That's a
yeah,
hard thing. So I'm just really thankful for your story of highlighting that, and it's aspirational
yeah.
for me.
Thank you. Yeah, I try to use my wise mind a lot. I really like any analogy, with your rational and your emotional and just
Hmm.
combining that and, being okay with being wrong, using your wise mind.
Yeah,
So
love
I
it.
love that.
All right, Joy, you get the last word.
Oh dear. What was the question again?
Oh, I was hoping you weren't going to ask because no, it's kind of what having navigated really amazing times of having this lovely lady as your daughter and now as your adult child and having a different relationship of what has helped navigate the hard times to where you're in a good space right now.
I think the loss of control is
Like
hard but good.
acknowledging that you don't have any control. Is that
Yep.
okay? All right.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, as they're growing up, you're doing you're worried about every little thing. When she wasn't at home with us, it was hard. I'm not saying it was easy, but she came through it. I didn't have to be in all the details, and she was able to do it in a way that she needed to, and to just be okay to sit with that and not feel like I needed to jump in big ways. Um, if emergencies come up, that's different, but allowing her the space to explore those things and trust that God will take care of her through that process. I think, yeah, it's been a gift these last, I think something really struck me, I don't know, a couple months ago. I was thinking about, we had made some joke about how I'm just like my dad. Like my dad and I are wired so similarly. And I had never really thought about the fact that that could be hard for Maya, that she's not like intrinsically wired like us. necessarily. And so she's very musical. We are not at all. And, just some of those things that you like share characteristics with people that are blood related that aren't there, and that's a loss for her. And I had never really thought about that. And so just trying to like give her space to feel sad about some of those things, just like I need space to feel sad about some things, but to enjoy the good things because they're definitely there. We had a great time a couple weeks ago. We went shopping together. Nobody cried.
We were like, no
Um,
tears. Yay.
Progress.
That was even better than the podcast. There's been tears on the podcast,
Yeah.
so the shopping
I'm very
was better.
sorry about the tears.
Oh, don't
No,
apologize.
no. Oh, we love the authenticity.
And we're so thankful that you both were willing to be open and vulnerable, because I think it's a model of what's really worked for both of you, and it's going to be helpful for others to try to lean into some of the lessons that maybe they can learn from you rather than making the same mistakes, right? Or making the same struggles.
Yeah.
So we're
Exactly.
really thankful that you kind of came and shared your story. It's encouraging.
We are. And like Joy said, the story's not done. We look forward to witnessing your future together. You are at such an amazing age of like so much in front of you, Myah, and you've come so far already just in understanding healthy relationships and kind of moving forward and integrating your own identity. And we're all still in progress too. We're not done either.
Hey,
right?
wait,
So
what?
Joy, it's so cool to see you guys kind of walking through the hard stuff and being honest about it, but also we can see the love that you have for each other. And it's amazing. And we're so thankful that you have shared your story, and we can't wait to see good times in the future for you guys.